Hi, my name is Wiz. You probably don't know me, but that doesn't really matter. I'm here to talk about the End Island and why it's broken, and how Ender Slayer might just kill it entirely. John, can you turn on the projector? The End Island is made up of two areas, the Enderman's Nest and the Dragon's Den. I'll start with the Enderman's. The Enderman's Nest is made out of three layers, each populated with a different type of Enderman. On layer 1 you have level 42s, layer 2 level 45s, and on layer 3 level 50s. Why is this important? Well, because each Enderman is different and has been carefully designed to fit a different type of player. Come, let's look at the data. Level 42s who have 6000 health and are located on the first layer of the Enderman's Nest are designed for players who have only just arrived on the island. Hence why they don't have a lot of HP, but more importantly, why they have the highest drop chance of Ender Armor, since new players don't deal a lot of damage and don't have good armor. On layer 2 we have level 45s. These guys have 9000 health and are designed for players who have gotten a bit further in the game, and thus are located in a more grind-oriented environment, which is a thing those kinds of players will have to start doing more and more. And while they do have a lower drop chance of Ender Armor, they have the ability to drop Enderman pets, which means those players won't die in 2 hits of an Enderman. On the last layer, we meet level 50s. These have 9000 health and are intended for players who have started to make actual progress in the game, which is the whole point of the End Island, to serve as a buffer between players and the full game, which is why you see a low percentage of completion on relatively simple achievements, because most players throw up their hands here and go back to playing Vampire Sea, like everyone else. They have the lowest drop chance of Ender Armor, but the highest drop chance of higher leveled Enderman pets, which can be sold for quite a bit of money if you're lucky. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I promised evidence that the End Island is broken, not a year overdue walkthrough guide. So here's the problem: profitability. To an outside observer, the drop chance system may look fine. Each player gets what he most likely needs to progress. But once you throw money into the mix, the whole system just falls apart. What incentive does a level 45 Enderman player have to grind his level 45s instead of level 42s, which he can get way more Ender Armor drops from, make way more money, and have an easier time thanks to the things he can buy with all of his money? The only drawback of him doing this is him missing out on Enderman packs, which don't sell for a lot. And so, the more advanced players make easy money by stealing the kills of new players, and those new players are forced to kill the few Endermen that spawn in the tunnels leading down to the second layer, where they will accidentally aggravate a level 45 and get turned into mush. Now what can the admins do to fix this? Well, they can, for example, make it so the higher the level, the higher the drop chance of Ender Armor, but that would just flood the market, and the price would go the way Magma Armor did. They can't just add more layers for each type of Enderman, because that would just make the drop to the bottom of the nest unmakeable. It would just screw up the entire dynamic of the place. Maybe, instead of expanding downwards, the elements can expand to the sides. The tunnels that I mentioned before, leading down to the later layers, can just be expanded on. Maybe add more of them, or just make them wider, so there are more Endermans. And now onto the Dragon's Den. The Dragon's Den is like the Enderman's Nest in terms of mob power scaling, but if it was a circle expanding from the middle. In the middle you have Watchers, skeletons with 9000 health that instead of arrows shoot endermites. A bit further outward you have obsidian protectors, wither skeletons that have 10,000 health and are probably the fastest mob you'll ever encounter in this game. And at the most outer point of the circle, you have zealots. Now, while these so-called zealots just look like they're a bit stronger version of an enderman with 13,000 health, they are actually the lifeline of this island. Let me explain. While you have normal zealots and zealots that hold ender chests, meaning that they drop a random enchanted ender-related item when killed, you also have special zealots. If you kill an average, and I'm not making this up, of 420 zealots, you spawn a special zealot that if killed drops a summoning eye. And if you thought unfair competition was a problem in the Enderman's nest, you haven't seen nothing yet. Let's go back to that outer layer of the circle. This is what's called the zealot trigger. This is where most of the mob spawn points, mostly of zealots, are located, visualized by these carpets. And it is here where the world's most violent NASCAR race occurs. Here, players live and die by two things, speed and damage. And while most players obtain these things by getting young dragon armor, which costs 2 summoning eyes, 1.2 mil to make, and just put the fierce reforge on it, more advanced players find a better solution. Some use way more advanced weapons, like the Flower of Truth, which costs 10 summoning eyes, 5 mil, or the hated Frozen Scythe, which costs 14 summoning eyes, 7 mil, to reach zealots faster than other weaker players. God, I made this script too hard to pronounce. Giving them an unfair advantage over players far less advanced in the game. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't. Everyone has the right to do whatever they want, but as much as a free force shadow assassin player, worth around 7 mil, has the right to outclass other players, those other players still have the right to progress in the game. Which is why you always see people camping in these two spots at the very edge of the zealot ring, just wishing to not be bothered by a guy who has doubled their net worth manifested into an evil magical hope. So what can the admins do about this? Well, unlike Ender Armor, which although is important doesn't play a big role in player economics, summoning eyes are an incredibly effective and straightforward money-making method, which appeals to players who don't want to build big ugly farms or don't want to sit on a wet rock in the rain becoming a sweet cult member for an hour to make their money. And since summoning eyes are linked to dragons, making drastic changes to them means drastic changes for dragon armor too, greatly disrupting the game's progression, which creates this paradox of you want to change the end island so other people will be able to enjoy the game, but you also don't want to do anything so you don't accidentally ruin the game for everybody, which is largely the reason why the end island has been changed since its release. Hell, even the farming islands got an update. No offense, farming islands. But since the end island is so important and fragile, nothing has been done. Maybe the admins could add cracks and ravines in the unutilized parts of the den that would lead down to the unused bottom part of the island, with dug-in mines or ruins filled with a tougher version of a zealot, which has a bit higher drop chance of summoning eyes. The ruins could maybe expand on the zealot's lore, like an explanation to what happened to the holy dragon that made it go extinct. The ravines would mean more advanced players would go grind the tougher zealots, so they get higher special zealot drops, and thus make more money than if they were killing regular ones, and the players on the same power level of the island could keep on grinding normal zealots, now without worrying about overpowered weapons and armor sets valued at mind-boggling prices for them. But don't you forget that this still doesn't counter the summoning eye price dilemma. Every top player remembers how Kimset Flowers single-handedly, pun intended, cut the price of Necron handles by half. And if giving double the drop chance of the rarest item in the game can slash its value in two, think how a much more common and accessible one could be affected by this. Maybe the summoning eye dropping in price would make dragons viable again, creating this paradox that the low price of eyes creates demand for eyes to do dragons, since they're cheap enough to not be a complete money dump, which makes the price of high again because there's a lot of demand but not a lot of stock, making dragons not viable again. Nobody buys, prices go down because demand is down. Dragons are now viable again because dragons were no longer viable again. I know economics are a bizarre thing. I stop. So as you can tell, the end island isn't a very stable place. If you apply too much pressure or take things in ways that the admins didn't already foresee, the balance of the island starts to fall apart. Since there's a constant Enderman route, any unbalanced method to get them faster than other people can send ripples down the game's progression and disrupt the entire flow of the island. The end isn't very good at controlling and distributing the power of its player base. So do I even need to explain why an Ender Slayer, the thing where you need to kill a lot of Endermen in quick succession, in a place who's constantly in an Enderman route, are not going to mix well? You seeing the problem here? Putting things like mythic rarity pet upgrade stones and ferocity weapons in a place where people are impressed by 6000 damage is not going to end up well. Linking level 42s and 50s and zealots to the Slayer counter just means the end is going to be a much more crowded and a much less balanced place. So far, the only dangerously powerful players coming back to the end island were bonus sword swappers. People who just come in, do an end stone protector fight, maybe kill a few zealots to make it spawn faster, and then just leave without making a big deal. But now everybody is going to have to return to the end island at one point or another. And since the Ender Slayer bosses have HP in the millions, most of the people that are going to do Ender Slayer are people with Necron's blade weapons. Fun fact, it only takes 4 left clicks, one for each corner, to wipe out an entire layer of the Enderman's nest. If the China shop is already located on a boat, why bring a bull into the equation? Not to mention the fact that unlike regular slayers whom you can distinguish between normal mobs and them because they wear armor, Endermen can't wear armor. So people who are just grinding zealots normally, not paying a lot of attention, are going to accidentally aggravate a slayer boss that has their net worth in HP. Maybe it's time to stop closing your ears and eyes shut and sitting in a corner and pretending that everything is fine and actually doing something. Look how well the Spider's Den revamp worked. Can't you just wonder what a modernized, more adapted End Island might look like? Just before I go, I want to apologize for not uploading in over a month and a half. I've been busy doing other things, getting addicted to dungeons, getting laughed at my skill average, forming a cult around Easter Jerry. Eh? Say, what's your next lesson? It's supposed to be PE, but it's raining outside because of the ancient people, so he's probably just gonna put on one of those boring family-rated movies pirated on YouTube. Ah, well, a lot better content is on its way.